The millionaire watched everything fail at the event, until the intern saved his reputation. Get ready to witness one of the most incredible stories of perseverance and unexpected heroism you've ever. By this amazing journey, make sure to hit that like button right now, subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of what's about to unfold. Now let's dive into this extraordinary story that will remind you why you should never underestimate anyone. Chapter 1. The Pressure. The 45th floor of the Millennium Tower in downtown Los Angeles buzzed with the kind of frantic energy that comes with impossible deadlines and unlimited budgets. Marcus Chen, CEO and founder of Apex Innovations, stood in his corner office staring out at the sprawling city below, his reflection ghost-like in the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 38, Marcus had built his tech company from a garage startup into a billion-dollar empire. But today felt different. Today, everything he had worked for hung in the balance. In exactly 72 hours, Apex Innovations would host the most important product launch in the company's 12-year history. The Genesis AI platform, a revolutionary artificial intelligence system designed to optimize business operations for Fortune 500 companies, represented 3 years of development and nearly $200 million in investment. The launch event would be attended by tech industry leaders, major investors, and media representatives from around the world. Marcus had built his reputation on flawless execution and innovative thinking, but the pressure surrounding this launch was unlike anything he had experienced before. The tech industry was watching, competitors were circling like vultures, and early whispers suggested that some people expected Apex Innovations to fail spectacularly. The irony wasn't lost on him that success had made him paranoid about failure. When he was starting out in his garage 12 years ago, failure was just another step toward eventual success. Now, with thousands of employees, billions in valuation, and his face on magazine covers, failure felt like it could destroy not just his company, but his entire identity. "Mr. Chen?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom, interrupting his brooding. "The Genesis launch team is ready for the daily briefing." Marcus straightened his Italian silk tie and walked toward the conference room where his senior leadership team was already assembled. These were the people he had hand-picked over the years. Brilliant. Minds with impressive credentials from Stanford, MIT, and Harvard. Each one was being paid a salary that most people could only dream of, and today he needed them to justify every penny. The conference room was a study in modern corporate luxury, a polished mahogany table that could seat 20 people, state-of-the-art presentation equipment, and panoramic views of Los Angeles stretching to the Pacific Ocean. But despite the impressive setting, the mood was tense. Sarah Mitchell, the chief technology officer, stood at the head of the table with a tablet in her hand and concern written across her face. At 42, she was one of the few people Marcus trusted completely, having worked with him since the early days when the company had only 15 employees. "We have several critical issues that need immediate attention," Sarah began without preamble. "The main presentation system crashed during testing yesterday evening, and we're having compatibility problems with the demonstration software." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. "How critical are we talking?" "The system failure could potentially happen during the live demonstration," said David Park, the head of software development. "We're working around the clock to identify the source of the problem, but honestly, we might need a backup plan." "Backup plan?" Marcus's voice carried a dangerous edge that everyone in the room recognized. "There is no backup plan. This event has been planned for 18 months. We have 500 of the most important people in tech flying in from around the world. The press release went out 6 weeks ago. There is no backup plan because failure is not an option." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that Marcus's perfectionism had driven the company's success, but it also made him difficult to work with when things weren't going according to plan. Several team members exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Sir," ventured Lisa Rodriguez, the marketing director, "perhaps we could simplify the demonstration or focus more on the theoretical capabilities rather than the live system integration." Marcus turned to her with the kind of look that had made seasoned executives reconsider their career choices. "Lisa, we're not launching a theoretical product. We're launching a working AI system that will revolutionize how businesses operate. If we can't demonstrate that it actually works, then we're just another tech company making promises we can't keep. The meeting continued for another hour, with each department head reporting various challenges and obstacles. The catering company was having supply chain issues. The event venue's internet infrastructure might not be robust enough to handle the demonstration's bandwidth requirements. Two key investors had scheduling conflicts and might not attend. The media preview had been pushed back twice due to software bugs. As Marcus listened to the litany of problems, he felt the familiar knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. This was supposed to be his moment of triumph, the culmination of everything he had built. Instead, it was beginning to feel like a disaster waiting to happen. After dismissing the team with stern instructions to fix everything by tomorrow morning, Marcus found himself alone in the conference room, staring out at the city again. He thought about the early days, when solving problems meant staying up all night writing code or calling suppliers, personally to negotiate better deals. Now he was surrounded by layers of management and bureaucracy that sometimes seemed to create more problems than they solved. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Eleanor. "Remember dinner with my parents tonight at 7. Please try to be present, not just physically there." He had forgotten completely about the dinner, his mind consumed with the launch preparation. Elena had been understanding about his work obsession for 12 years, but even her patience had limits. As he walked back to his office, Marcus passed through the open workspace where dozens of employees were working on various aspects of the Genesis launch. The energy was palpable. Programmers debugging code, designers refining presentations, project managers coordinating logistics. These people believed in the product and in the company, and Marcus felt the weight of responsibility for their futures. Near the coffee station, he noticed a young man he didn't recognize, working intently on a laptop. The guy looked like he was barely out of college, wearing a simple button-down shirt and jeans that had seen better days. He was surrounded by what appeared to be hand-drawn diagrams and notebook pages covered in dense writing. "Who's that?" Marcus asked Jennifer Walsh, the Human Resources Director, who happened to be walking by. "That's Alex Rodriguez, one of our summer interns, computer science major from UCLA. He's been working with the Genesis team for about 2 months. Marcus nodded absently. He had approved the intern program as a way to identify potential future employees and give back to the educational community, but he rarely paid attention to the individual interns. They were usually assigned routine tasks and basic research projects, nothing that would impact major company initiatives. As he watched, Alex looked up from his laptop and caught Marcus's eye for a brief moment. The young man nodded respectfully, then immediately returned to his work with an intensity that reminded Marcus of himself at that age. "What's he working on?" Marcus found himself asking. "I'm not sure exactly," Jennifer replied. "Something related to the Genesis platform, I think. Sarah Mitchell has been his supervisor, so she would know the details." Marcus filed the information away and continued to his office, but something about the intern's focused energy stuck with him. In a company full of people with impressive degrees and years of experience, there was something refreshing about someone who was just excited to be working on cutting-edge technology. But as the pressure of the upcoming launch reasserted itself, Marcus pushed thoughts of interns and everything else aside. He had 72 hours to ensure that the most important event in his company's history went off without a hitch. The industry was watching. Competitors were waiting for any sign of weakness, and failure would not only destroy the Genesis platform, but potentially bring down everything he had built. What Marcus didn't know was that the young intern he had barely noticed would soon become the most important person in the building, and that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. If you're already hooked on this incredible story and want to see how Alex's journey unfolds, make sure you've hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Trust me, what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. Chapter 2. The Intern. Alex Rodriguez had dreamed of working at Apex Innovations since his sophomore year at UCLA, when he had watched Marcus Chen deliver a keynote speech about the future of artificial intelligence. Sitting in the university auditorium, surrounded by hundreds of other computer science students, Alex had been captivated not just by the technology Marcus described, but by the vision of using AI to solve real-world problems that could improve millions of people's lives. Now, 2 years later, Alex found himself working in the very building where that vision was becoming reality. The internship at Apex Innovations was unpaid, which meant he was living on ramen noodles and the occasional care package from his parents. But being part of the Genesis AI development team was worth every sacrifice. At 22, Alex was the youngest person on the Genesis team by at least 5 years. While his colleagues had advanced degrees and years of industry experience, Alex brought something equally valuable: an outsider's perspective and the kind of fresh thinking that often came from not knowing what was supposed to be impossible. His supervisor, Sarah Mitchell, had initially assigned him routine tasks: organizing documentation, running basic compatibility tests, and attending team meetings to take notes. But as the weeks passed, Sarah had begun to notice that Alex's questions and observations often revealed insights that the more experienced team members had missed. "The thing about Alex," Sarah had told her, husband over dinner the previous week, "is that he doesn't just accept that things work the way they've always worked. He wants to understand why, and sometimes his why questions lead us to realize we don't have good answers." Alex's workspace was a small desk in the corner of the open development area, equipped with a basic laptop and a stack of technical manuals that he had read cover to cover. But what really defined his workspace were the hand-drawn diagrams and flowcharts that covered every available surface. While his colleagues relied on sophisticated software tools to visualize complex systems, Alex often found that drawing things out by hand helped him understand the underlying relationships and dependencies. The Genesis AI platform was incredibly complex, a machine learning system that could analyze business operations across multiple industries and identify optimization opportunities that human analysts might miss. The system required integrating data from dozens of different sources, processing it through multiple AI algorithms, and presenting the results in an interface that executives could actually understand and act upon. Alex had spent his first month just trying to comprehend the scope of what the Genesis team was building. But during his second month, he had begun to see patterns and potential problems that seemed to have escaped notice during the formal development process. The issue that kept him awake at night was something the senior developers called edge case scenarios, unusual situations where the AI might encounter data or conditions that weren't covered in the standard testing protocols. The Genesis system worked flawlessly when processing the carefully curated test data that the development team had created. But Alex worried about what would happen when the system encountered the messy, inconsistent real-world data that actual businesses would feed into it. His concerns weren't purely theoretical. During his junior year at UCLA, Alex had worked part-time for a small logistics company, helping them digitize their paper-based tracking systems. What he had learned was that real business data was often incomplete, incorrectly formatted, or just plain wrong. The Genesis AI needed to be robust enough to handle these imperfections without crashing or producing nonsensical recommendations. Alex had tried to raise these concerns during team meetings, but his suggestions were usually dismissed politely as interesting academic considerations that could be addressed in future versions of the software. The pressure to prepare for the launch event meant that everyone was focused on demonstrating the system's capabilities under ideal conditions, not stress testing its limitations. But Alex couldn't let go of his concerns, partly because he understood something that his more experienced colleagues seemed to have forgotten. The demonstration at the launch event wouldn't be conducted under laboratory conditions. There would be network latency, hardware compatibility issues, and the kind of unexpected variables that could turn a flawless presentation into a public disaster. So Alex had begun working on what he privately called Plan B, a simplified version of the Genesis platform that could deliver impressive results even if the main system encountered problems. He worked on it during his lunch breaks, after hours, and on weekends, using his own laptop and open-source development tools. The Plan B system wasn't as sophisticated as the full Genesis platform, but it was designed to be bulletproof. It could handle incomplete data, work around network connectivity issues, and degrade gracefully if certain components failed. Most importantly, it could demonstrate the core value proposition of AI-driven business optimization without requiring the complex infrastructure that made the main system so impressive, but also so fragile. Alex knew that suggesting a backup system would probably be seen as questioning the competence of the senior development team, so he kept his work secret. But as the launch event approached and he overheard increasingly frantic conversations about technical difficulties, he began to wonder if his plan B might actually be needed. The morning after Marcus Chen's tense meeting with the senior leadership team, Alex arrived at the office early to find Sarah Mitchell already at her desk, surrounded by coffee cups and looking like she hadn't slept. "Rough night?" Alex asked, setting down a fresh cup of coffee he had picked up for her on his way in. Sarah looked up with exhausted eyes and managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Alex. Yeah, we're having some challenges with the system integration. Nothing we can't handle, but it's definitely stressful." Alex hesitated for a moment, then decided to take a risk. "Sarah, can I ask you something? What happens if the main demonstration system fails during the launch event?" "It won't fail," Sarah replied automatically, but Alex could see the doubt in her eyes. "But if it did? I mean, hypothetically, would there be any kind of backup plan?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring at her computer screen. "Honestly, Alex, that's not really something an intern needs to worry about. The senior team has everything under control." But Alex could tell from her tone that she wasn't as confident as she was trying to sound, and that evening, as he worked late on his Plan B system, he made a decision that would either save his career or end it before it really began. He was going to finish the backup system, test it thoroughly, and prepare a complete demonstration package. If the main Genesis platform worked perfectly during the launch event, no one would ever need to know that Plan B existed. But if something went wrong, if the complex, sophisticated system that everyone was counting on failed when it mattered most, Alex would be ready to step forward with a solution. What Alex didn't realize was that in less than 48 hours, his secret project would become the only thing standing between Marcus Chen's company and complete disaster. Sometimes the most important contributions come from the people who are overlooked, and sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. Chapter 3. The Countdown. With 36 hours remaining until the Genesis launch event, the atmosphere at Apex Innovations had shifted from urgent efficiency to barely controlled panic. The technical problems that had seemed manageable just days before were multiplying faster than the development team could solve them, and Marcus Chen was beginning to face the possibility that his company's most important product launch might become its most spectacular failure. The main conference room had been converted into a war room, with multiple monitors displaying system diagnostics, project timelines, and an ominous countdown clock that seemed to tick faster with each passing minute. Sarah Mitchell stood at the center of it all, coordinating between hardware engineers, software developers, and systems administrators who were all working around the clock to identify and fix the cascade of problems threatening the demonstration. "The primary server cluster is stable," reported James Kim, the senior systems engineer, "but we're still seeing intermittent failures in the data processing pipeline. The AI algorithms are working correctly, but the system can't reliably access the data they need to analyze." Marcus stood at the back of the room, his expensive suit wrinkled from sleeping at the office for the past 2 nights. His usual commanding presence was diminished by exhaustion and stress, and for the first time in years, he looked like what he actually was, a man who had built something larger than he could completely control. "What about the backup servers?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer from Sarah's expression. "The backup systems have the same architecture as the primary systems," Sarah replied. "If there's a fundamental compatibility issue, switching to backup won't solve the problem." David Park, who had been working with the software team to identify the root cause of the failures, looked up from his laptop with grim news. "I think we've found the source of the problem. The Genesis AI system requires a level of real-time data processing that's pushing our hardware beyond its designed capacity. Everything works fine in our testing environment because we're using small, clean data sets. But when we try to demonstrate the system with realistic business data, the processing requirements overwhelm the system." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Genesis platform had been designed to handle enormous amounts of complex business data. That was its primary selling point. If it couldn't demonstrate that capability during the launch event, then the entire value proposition would collapse. "So, what are our options?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected there were no good answers. "We could simplify the demonstration," suggested Lisa Rodriguez from the marketing team. "Focus on smaller data sets, maybe pre-process some of the data to reduce the real-time computational load." "That's not a demonstration," Marcus replied sharply. "That's a magic show. We're supposed to be showing these people a revolutionary AI system, not parlor tricks with pre-selected data." Alex Rodriguez sat in the corner of the room, taking notes and trying to remain invisible while absorbing every detail of the crisis unfolding around him. As an intern, he wasn't expected to contribute to problem-solving at this level, but he had been working on exactly this type of issue for weeks. His Plan B system had been designed specifically to handle the kind of real-world data processing challenges that were now threatening the main Genesis platform. While the senior developers had focused on creating the most sophisticated system possible, Alex had focused on creating the most reliable system possible, but suggesting that a 22-year-old intern had anticipated problems that experienced engineers had missed would be career suicide, even if he was right. So Alex remained quiet, continuing to work on his backup system, while hoping that the senior team would find a solution to their problems. As the day wore on, the situation continued to deteriorate. Each attempted fix seemed to create new problems, and the countdown clock in the war room became an increasingly ominous presence. Catering companies, media representatives, and VIP guests were already beginning to arrive in Los Angeles for the event, which meant that canceling or postponing was no longer a realistic option. That evening, as most of the team finally went home to get a few hours of sleep before the final day of preparation, Alex remained in the office working on his backup system. He had been refining and testing it for weeks, but now he was working with genuine urgency, knowing that it might actually be needed. The Plan B system was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to process enormous amounts of data in real time, it used machine learning algorithms to identify patterns in smaller data samples, then extrapolated those patterns to generate recommendations that were statistically sound, even if they weren't based on comprehensive analysis. It wasn't as impressive as the full Genesis platform, but it would work reliably under real-world conditions. More importantly, it could demonstrate the core value of AI-driven business optimization in a way that would convince investors and clients that the technology was ready for practical implementation. As Alex worked through the night, he built not just a functional backup system, but a complete presentation package that could be deployed if the main demonstration failed. He prepared sample datasets, created user interface mockups, and even wrote presentation notes that explained the system's capabilities in language that non-technical executives could understand. By dawn, Alex had created something that he was genuinely proud of, a system that might not be as ambitious as the Genesis platform, but that actually worked. He saved everything to a portable drive and stored it in his desk drawer, hoping that no one would ever need to know it existed. But as he watched the sunrise through the office windows, Alex had a growing sense that his backup system was about to become much more than an academic exercise. The next 24 hours would determine whether Apex Innovations continued to be seen as an industry leader or became a cautionary tale about the dangers of overpromising and under-delivering. Marcus Chen arrived at the office that morning looking like a man who had accepted that disaster was inevitable. His usual confidence had been replaced by grim determination to at least fail with dignity. But what Marcus didn't know was that salvation might come from the one person in the building that he had barely noticed, the intern who had been preparing for exactly this crisis, while everyone else was hoping it wouldn't happen. Chapter 4. The Collapse. The morning of the Genesis launch event dawned clear and bright in Los Angeles, but inside the Apex Innovations headquarters, storm clouds were gathering. Marcus Chen stood in his office at 6:30 a.m., adjusting his tie for the third time while staring at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. In 12 hours, 500 of the most important people in the tech industry would gather at the Beverly Hills Convention Center to witness what was supposed to be the culmination of his career. Instead, Marcus felt like he was preparing for his own professional execution. The overnight team had worked frantically to resolve the system failures that had been plaguing the Genesis platform, But each attempted fix had revealed new problems. The artificial intelligence system that was supposed to revolutionize business operations couldn't reliably complete even basic demonstration tasks without crashing or producing nonsensical results. Sarah Mitchell knocked on his office door, her face showing the strain of 3 consecutive sleepless nights. "Marcus, we need to talk." "Please tell me you have good news," Marcus said, though his tone indicated he wasn't expecting any. "The development team has been testing the system all night," Sarah began, settling into one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "We've managed to stabilize some of the core functions, but the real-time data processing is still fundamentally broken. The system can handle small demonstrations, but anything approaching realistic business data loads causes cascading failures." Marcus felt the last of his hope drain away. "So what you're telling me is that our revolutionary AI platform can't actually handle the problems it was designed to solve?" "Not reliably, no. Not yet." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of 3 years of development, $200 million in investment, and the expectations of an entire industry. Marcus had built his reputation on delivering impossible innovations on schedule, but this time the impossible had remained impossible. "What are my options?" Marcus asked finally. "We could cancel the event," Sarah suggested without conviction. "Claim a technical issue, reschedule for 6 months from now." "With 500 people already flying in from around the world? With the press release that went out to every major tech publication? That's not a postponement, Sarah. That's a public admission that we've failed." "Or," Sarah continued reluctantly, "we could proceed with a simplified demonstration. Show the system working with pre-processed data, focus on the user interface and theoretical capabilities rather than real-time processing." Marcus shook his head. "That's even worse than cancelling. We'd be lying to our investors and clients about what the system can actually do. When they try to implement it in real business environments, the failures would destroy our credibility permanently." As they sat in defeated silence, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from the event coordinator. "Setup begins at 2 p.m. Need final confirmation on demo requirements." The convention center staff was already preparing for an event that might not have anything meaningful to demonstrate. The morning progressed with a series of increasingly desperate attempts to salvage something from the wreckage. The marketing team suggested focusing the presentation on future development plans rather than current capabilities. The business development team proposed turning the launch into a preview event that would build anticipation for a later release, but every suggestion felt like a different way of admitting defeat. By noon, as Marcus prepared to leave for the convention center, he had accepted that the Genesis launch would likely be remembered as one of the most spectacular failures in tech industry history. The company would survive. They had other products and enough cash reserves to weather the storm, but his reputation as a visionary leader would be permanently damaged. The Beverly Hills Convention Center was already bustling with activity when Marcus arrived. Event staff were setting up display booths, testing audio-visual equipment, and arranging hundreds of chairs in the main auditorium. The scale of the operation made the impending disaster feel even more surreal. All of this preparation and expense for an event that would showcase a system that didn't actually work. Alex Rodriguez had arrived early as well, officially to help with setup tasks, but primarily because he couldn't stay away. He had spent the morning doing final tests on his backup system, and everything was working exactly as designed. The Plan B platform wasn't as sophisticated as Genesis, but it was reliable, demonstrable, and capable of convincing an audience that AI-driven business optimization was a viable technology. But Alex was still just an intern, and suggesting that he had a solution to problems that had stumped the senior development team would be presumptuous at best and delusional at worst. So he focused on his assigned tasks, helping arrange technical equipment, distributing informational materials, and staying out of the way, while more important people made critical decisions. At 3 p.m., Marcus gathered his senior team for a final strategy meeting in a conference room adjacent to the main auditorium. Through the walls, they could hear the sounds of guests arriving, media representatives setting up cameras, and the general buzz of an industry event that was expected to be significant. "We have 2 hours before the presentation begins," Marcus said, looking around the table at the exhausted faces of his leadership team. "I need everyone to be honest with me about our options. Can we deliver any kind of meaningful demonstration of the Genesis platform? David Park, the head of software development, was the first to respond. We can show the user interface, explain the theoretical capabilities, and demonstrate some basic functions with preloaded data, but any attempt to show real-time AI analysis of complex business data will likely result in system failures that the audience will be able to see. So our options are to lie about what the system can do or to have it fail publicly during the demonstration. Marcus summarized grimly. Those appear to be our options, yes. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the convention center parking lot that was filled with luxury cars belonging to investors, clients, and competitors who had come to see Apex Innovations either triumph or fail. For the first time in his career, he was genuinely unsure about what to do next. What Marcus didn't know was that 20 feet away, a 22-year-old intern was finishing the final setup on a backup system that could save not just the event, but the entire reputation of the company. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources, and sometimes the people who seem least important are actually the most crucial. But before Alex could find the courage to speak up, the crisis was about to get much worse. In 1 hour, the presentation would begin, and Marcus Chen would face the most challenging moment of his professional life. Chapter 5. The Disaster. At exactly 5 p.m., Marcus Chen walked onto the stage of the Beverly Hills Convention Center's main auditorium to face 500 of the most influential people in the technology industry. The audience included venture capitalists who had invested hundreds of millions in Apex Innovations, Fortune 500 CEOs who were considering implementing the Genesis platform, tech journalists whose articles could make or break companies, and competitors who were eager to see Marcus fail. The auditorium was impressive, a modern space with stadium seating, multiple large screens, and state-of-the-art audio-visual equipment. Apex Innovations had spared no expense in creating an environment that would showcase their revolutionary AI platform in the most compelling way possible. But as Marcus looked out at the expectant faces in the audience, he felt like an actor who had forgotten his lines in the middle of the most important performance of his career. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's sound system, "thank you for joining us today for what we believe will be a defining moment in the evolution of artificial intelligence applications for business." The presentation began smoothly enough. Marcus was an experienced speaker who had delivered hundreds of keynotes over the years, and his opening remarks about the future of AI and business optimization were polished and compelling. The audience listened attentively as he explained the theoretical foundations of the Genesis platform and its potential to revolutionize how companies operated. But everyone in the auditorium was waiting for the same thing, the live demonstration that would prove Genesis could actually deliver on its ambitious promises. "Now," Marcus said, turning toward the large screens that would display the Genesis interface, "I'm excited to show you our AI platform in action, analyzing real business data and generating optimization recommendations that could save companies millions of dollars annually." Behind the scenes, Sarah Mitchell and her technical team were already sweating as they initiated the demonstration sequence. They had decided to attempt a simplified version of their planned presentation, using a smaller dataset, and hoping that the reduced complexity would allow the system to function without crashing. The Genesis interface appeared on the screens, and for a moment, everything looked perfect. The user interface was elegant and intuitive, displaying colorful charts and graphs that made complex business data accessible to non-technical users. Marcus began explaining how the AI algorithms were analyzing supply chain efficiency for a fictional manufacturing company, identifying bottlenecks and recommending improvements. "As you can see," Marcus continued, "the Genesis platform is processing thousands of data points in real time, evaluating everything from supplier performance to inventory, management to transportation logistics." But even as he spoke, Marcus could see warning indicators beginning to appear on the screens, visible only to him and his technical team. The system was struggling to process even the reduced data set they had prepared, and response times were growing longer with each query. The first sign of trouble came when Marcus attempted to demonstrate the platform's predictive analytics capabilities. He clicked on a menu option that should have generated a forecast. of the manufacturing company's operational efficiency over the next 6 months. Instead of displaying results, the screen showed a loading indicator that continued spinning without producing any output. "The system is performing some complex calculations," Marcus said, trying to buy time while hoping the interface would respond. As you can imagine, generating accurate predictions based on multiple variables requires significant computational power. But 30 seconds passed, then a minute, and still no results appeared. Marcus could see Sarah in the wings, frantically typing on her laptop while trying to diagnose what was happening with the system. Her expression made it clear that the news was not good. "Let me try a different demonstration," Marcus said, attempting to navigate to another section of the Genesis platform. But when he clicked on the menu option for real-time optimization recommendations, the entire interface froze completely. The audience, which had been politely patient during the loading delay, began to murmur as it became obvious that something was seriously wrong. Tech industry veterans recognized the signs of a system failure, and journalists in the audience began taking notes about what was shaping up to be a very different story than they had expected to write. Marcus tried to maintain his composure while clicking frantically on various interface elements, hoping to get some response from the system. But the Genesis platform had crashed completely, leaving him standing on stage in front of 500 people with nothing but frozen screens behind him. "We seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties," Marcus said, his voice betraying the first signs of the panic he was feeling internally. "Let me just work with our technical team to resolve this quickly." But there was no quick resolution. Sarah and her team were discovering that the system crash had been so severe that even restarting the servers wouldn't immediately restore functionality. The complex AI algorithms that powered Genesis required extensive initialization procedures, and even under optimal conditions, getting the system running again would take at least 20 minutes. As the minutes ticked by, the audience's polite patience began to transform into restless skepticism. People started checking their phones, having side conversations, and generally displaying the behavior of an audience that was losing interest rapidly. Marcus could see competitors in the crowd beginning to smile, and investors looking increasingly concerned about the money they had committed to his company. "I want to apologize for this unexpected delay," Marcus announced after 10 minutes of futile troubleshooting. "The Genesis platform represents cutting-edge technology, and as with any innovative system, we occasionally encounter challenges that require resolution." But even as he spoke, Marcus knew that his credibility was evaporating with each passing moment. In the technology industry, reliability was everything. Companies could forgive products that were less sophisticated than promised, but they could never forgive systems that simply didn't work when they were needed most. The journalists in the audience were no longer taking notes about revolutionary AI capabilities. Instead, they were writing stories about over-promising, failed demonstrations, and the dangers of believing hype over substance. The headlines that would appear in tomorrow's tech publications were already being written in their minds. Apex Innovations' Genesis platform crashes during high-stakes launch event. After 15 minutes of delays, with the audience growing increasingly restless and his technical team no closer to resolving the system failures, Marcus faced a decision that would define the rest of his career. He could continue stalling and hoping for a miracle, effectively turning his company's most important event into a public humiliation. Or he could acknowledge the failure honestly and try to salvage whatever credibility remained. But as Marcus prepared to make the most difficult announcement of his professional life, he had no idea that salvation was sitting in the back of the auditorium in the form of a 22-year-old intern who had been preparing for exactly this moment for weeks. Sometimes disaster is just opportunity wearing a disguise, and sometimes the most important contributions come from the people who are overlooked until everything else fails. Chapter 6. The Intervention. Alex Rodriguez sat in the back row of the auditorium, watching the most successful entrepreneur he had ever known face the complete collapse of his life's work. For 15 agonizing minutes, Alex had witnessed Marcus Chen's struggle with a system failure that was destroying not just a product launch, but potentially the entire future of Apex Innovations. The audience was beyond restless now. People were standing up, heading for the exits, and engaging in animated conversations about what they had just witnessed. Tech journalists were typing furiously on their laptops, crafting stories about one of the most spectacular product launch failures in recent memory. Investors were making phone calls, probably discussing damage control strategies for their portfolios. But Alex wasn't thinking about the business implications or the industry fallout. He was thinking about the problem itself and about the solution that was sitting on a portable drive in his laptop bag. For weeks, Alex had been developing his backup system precisely because he had anticipated this scenario. While the senior development team had focused on creating the most impressive demonstration possible, Alex had focused on creating the most reliable demonstration possible. His Plan B system wasn't as sophisticated as Genesis, but it worked consistently, and right now, consistency was the only thing that mattered. The question was whether a 22-year-old intern had any business inserting himself into a crisis of this magnitude. Suggesting that he could solve problems that had stumped experienced engineers would be presumptuous at best and delusional at worst. But watching Marcus stand helplessly on stage while his company's reputation crumbled, Alex realized that presumptuousness might be better than silence. Marcus had just announced another delay while the technical team attempted to restart the entire system infrastructure. The audience was now openly skeptical, with some people beginning to leave the auditorium entirely. If something didn't change in the next few minutes, the event would be remembered as a complete disaster. Alex made a decision that would either save his career or end it before it had really begun. He stood up from his seat in the back row and began walking toward the stage, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder and his heart pounding with a mixture of terror and determination. Security personnel initially moved to intercept him, but Alex held up his Apex Innovations intern badge and spoke loudly enough for nearby audience members to hear, "I'm with the technical team. I think I can help resolve the system issue." Sarah Mitchell saw Alex approaching from the wings and looked confused. "Alex, what are you doing? This isn't the time for—" "Sarah, I've been working on a backup system," Alex interrupted, his voice urgent but controlled. "It's not as complex as Genesis, but it works reliably. We could use it to demonstrate the core AI capabilities while you guys fix the main system." Sarah stared at him as if he had suggested that he could fix the problem by using magic. "Alex, you're an intern. This is a crisis situation involving our most important product launch. This isn't the time for experimental projects." But Marcus, who had been watching this exchange from the stage, suddenly appeared beside them. Up close, Alex could see the exhaustion and desperation in the CEO's eyes, and realized that Marcus was willing to consider options that would have seemed impossible just an hour earlier. "What kind of backup system?" Marcus asked directly. Alex took a deep breath and launched into the explanation he had been rehearsing in his mind for weeks. "It's a simplified version of the Genesis platform that uses machine learning algorithms to analyze business data and generate optimization recommendations. It's not as comprehensive as the full system, but it's designed to work reliably under real-world conditions. It can handle network latency, data inconsistencies, and hardware limitations without crashing." "How long would it take to set up?" Marcus asked. 5 minutes to load the software, another 5 minutes to configure it for the demonstration data. The system is designed to be portable and self-contained." Marcus looked at Sarah, who was clearly struggling with the implications of turning to an intern for salvation during the company's most critical moment, but the alternative was acknowledging complete failure in front of 500 industry leaders. "Do it," Marcus said finally. "Alex, you have 10 minutes to show me that your system can demonstrate AI-driven business optimization without crashing." What happened next would become legendary in the tech industry, though the full story wouldn't be known for years. While the audience waited and speculated about what was happening on stage, Alex Rodriguez connected his laptop to the auditorium's presentation system and began loading software that he had developed in his spare time, while everyone else was focused on more sophisticated solutions. The Plan B interface appeared on the screens throughout the auditorium, and immediately Alex could see that it looked different from the Genesis platform. It was simpler, more straightforward, and obviously designed for functionality rather than visual impact. But when Alex began demonstrating its capabilities, something remarkable happened. The system worked exactly as designed. When Alex requested analysis of the manufacturing company's supply chain efficiency, the results appeared within seconds. When he asked for optimization recommendations, the system generated clear, actionable suggestions that were easy to understand and implement. When he demonstrated predictive analytics, the forecasts were displayed immediately with supporting data that explained how the conclusions had been reached. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced to the audience, his voice carrying a confidence that had been missing for the past 20 minutes, "I'd like to introduce Alex Rodriguez, one of our development team members, who will be demonstrating our AI platform's core capabilities." Alex stepped up to the microphone, feeling simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. He had never spoken to an audience larger than his college classroom, and now he was presenting to 500 of the most important people in the technology industry. But as he began explaining how the AI system analyzed business data and generated insights, his nervousness faded into genuine enthusiasm for the technology he had created. For the next 20 minutes, Alex delivered a demonstration that was everything the original Genesis presentation was supposed to be. The system responded instantly to every query, generated meaningful insights from complex business data, and showed clear value propositions that executives could understand and implement. Most importantly, it worked reliably, without crashes, delays, or technical difficulties. The audience, which had been skeptical and restless just minutes earlier, became increasingly engaged as Alex showed them a practical application of artificial intelligence that could actually deliver on its promises. Instead of watching a sophisticated system fail, they were seeing a straightforward system succeed. When Alex finished the demonstration, the auditorium erupted in applause that was both surprised and genuine. People had come expecting to see either a revolutionary breakthrough or a spectacular failure, and instead they had witnessed something more valuable, a working solution to real business problems. But the most important moment came when Marcus stepped back up to the microphone to conclude the presentation. Instead of trying to minimize Alex's contribution or claim credit for the backup system, Marcus did something that revealed the kind of leader he truly was. "What you've just seen," Marcus announced, "demonstrates something fundamental about innovation and problem solving. Sometimes the most important breakthroughs come not from the most experienced people or the most sophisticated technology, but from fresh thinking and practical solutions." Alex Rodriguez, our intern, saw challenges that our senior team missed, and he developed solutions that our complex systems couldn't deliver. The ovation that followed was different from the polite applause that usually concluded product launch events. It was the kind of recognition that comes when an audience realizes they have witnessed something unexpected and meaningful. And in that moment, Alex Rodriguez transformed from an overlooked intern into the person who had saved not just a product launch, but potentially an entire company's future. Sometimes the most important heroes are the ones nobody sees coming. Chapter 7. The Recognition. The hours following Alex's impromptu demonstration were unlike anything he had ever experienced. As the audience filed out of the auditorium, dozens of people stopped to shake his hand, exchange business cards, and ask detailed questions about the AI system he had developed. Tech journalists who had been preparing to write obituaries for Apex Innovations were now crafting stories about unexpected innovation and the power of fresh thinking. Marcus Chen stood in the wings, watching his 22-year-old intern field questions from venture capitalists and Fortune 500 CEOs with remarkable composure. Just 2 hours earlier, Marcus had been facing the complete collapse of his company's most important product launch. Now he was witnessing what might become one of the most celebrated comebacks in tech industry history. But Marcus was also experiencing something more personal and profound than professional relief. For the first time in years, he was remembering what had originally drawn him to entrepreneurship: the thrill of solving problems that others considered impossible, and the satisfaction of seeing innovative ideas transform into practical solutions that could improve people's lives. "Mr. Chen," Sarah Mitchell approached, with a mixture of exhaustion and amazement in her voice. "The preliminary feedback from attendees is overwhelmingly positive. People are calling Alex's demonstration refreshingly practical and exactly what the industry needs. 3 major clients have already asked for follow-up meetings to discuss implementation." Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on Alex, who was explaining the technical architecture of his backup system to a group of senior engineers from competing companies. The young man who had been taking notes and running errands just that morning was now being treated as a peer by industry veterans with decades of experience. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "we need to talk about how we move forward from here. The Genesis platform still has fundamental problems that need to be resolved before we can bring it to market. But Alex's system works right now today, and it solves real problems for real businesses. Are you suggesting we abandon 3 years of development work on Genesis in favor of an intern side project?" Marcus considered the question carefully. The Genesis platform represented an enormous investment of time, money, and reputation. Abandoning it would mean acknowledging that his company's most ambitious project had been a failure. But continuing to develop a system that might never work reliably could mean missing the opportunity to bring a practical AI solution to market. "I'm suggesting we expand our definition of success," Marcus replied. "Maybe the most important innovation isn't always the most sophisticated one. Maybe sometimes the best solution is the one that actually works." As the evening progressed, Alex found himself in conversations that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. Dr. Patricia Williams, the CTO of a major logistics company, spent 20 minutes discussing how his AI system could optimize their supply chain operations. Michael Torres, a senior partner at a leading venture capital firm, asked detailed questions about the system's scalability and market potential. But perhaps the most meaningful conversation came when Eleanor Chen, Marcus's wife, approached Alex near the end of the evening. "I wanted to thank you," she said simply, "not just for saving the event, but for reminding my husband why he became an entrepreneur in the first place. I haven't seen him this excited about technology in years." Alex looked across the room to where Marcus was engaged in an animated discussion with several potential clients, his earlier stress and exhaustion replaced by genuine enthusiasm. "Mrs. Chen, I just did what I thought was right. I never expected anything like this to happen." "That's exactly why it did happen," Elena replied with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the most important contributions come from people who aren't trying to prove how important they are." Later that evening, after the last attendees had departed and the convention center staff had begun cleaning up, Marcus gathered his core team for an impromptu debrief session. They sat in the same conference room where just hours earlier they had been contemplating complete disaster. "I want everyone to understand what happened here today," Marcus began, looking around the table at faces that showed a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and amazement. "We learned something important about innovation, about problem-solving, and about the value of diverse perspectives." He turned to Alex, who was still processing the surreal nature of the day's events. "Alex, your backup system didn't just save our demonstration. It showed us a different approach to artificial intelligence applications, one that prioritizes reliability and practical value over theoretical sophistication. But more importantly," Marcus continued, "you reminded us that the best solutions often come from unexpected sources. We spent months focused on what we thought was the most advanced approach, and we missed the approach that actually worked." Sarah Mitchell, who had been Alex's supervisor throughout his internship, spoke up. "I have to admit, I dismissed some of Alex's concerns about real-world data processing as academic worries. I thought his questions about edge cases and system reliability were missing the big picture. But it turns out he was seeing the picture more clearly than any of us." The conversation continued for another hour, as the team analyzed not just what had gone wrong with the Genesis platform, but what had gone right with Alex's backup system. The discussion revealed fundamental differences in approach that had implications far beyond a single product launch. As the meeting concluded, Marcus asked Alex to stay behind for a private conversation. When they were alone in the conference room, Marcus found himself in the unusual position of needing to thank someone who had just saved his career. "Alex, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. How long have you been working on the backup system?" "About 6 weeks," Alex replied. "I started it after I realized that the Genesis platform might have trouble with real-world data conditions. I never intended for anyone else to see it. I just wanted to understand the problems better by trying to solve them." "Myself. And you never mentioned it to anyone because—" Alex hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. "Because I was afraid that suggesting the senior team might be missing something would end my internship. I figured if I was wrong, no harm done. And if I was right, maybe I'd have something useful to contribute. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, reflecting on the implications of what Alex had just told him. A 22-year-old intern had identified critical problems that experienced. Engineers had missed, developed solutions that worked better than systems designed by experts, and kept quiet about it all because he was afraid of seeming presumptuous. "Alex," Marcus said finally, "I want to offer you a full-time position as a senior AI developer, reporting directly to me. Your backup system is going to become the foundation for our next-generation business optimization platform, and I want you to lead the development team." The offer was so far beyond anything Alex had. Imagine that he could barely process it. Just that morning, he had been hoping to complete his internship successfully and maybe get a recommendation for an entry-level position somewhere. Now he was being offered a senior role at one of the most prestigious tech companies in the world. "Mr. Chen, I don't know what to say. This is incredible, but I have to ask, are you sure you want someone with so little experience in such an important role?" Marcus smiled, thinking about everything that had happened that day. "Alex's experience is valuable, but it can also create blind spots. Today you showed me that sometimes the most experienced approach isn't the most effective approach. I need people who can see problems differently, and you've proven that you can do exactly that." As they shook hands on Alex's new position, both men understood that they had just witnessed something remarkable. A catastrophic failure had been transformed into an unexpected opportunity, and an overlooked intern had become the architect of his company's future. Sometimes the most important recognition comes not from seeking attention, but from focusing so completely on solving problems that success becomes inevitable. Chapter 8. The Transformation. 6 months after the Genesis launch event, Apex Innovations had become one of the most talked-about companies in the technology industry, but not for the reasons Marcus Chen had originally intended. Instead of being known for the most sophisticated AI platform ever developed, they had become famous for creating the most practical and reliable business optimization system on the market. Alex Rodriguez's backup system, which had started as a side project to address theoretical concerns, had evolved into the company's flagship product under his leadership as senior AI developer. The platform, now called Practical AI, was being implemented by dozens of Fortune 500 companies who valued its reliability and ease of use over the complexity that characterized many competing systems. Marcus stood in his office on a Thursday morning, reading the latest industry analysis of his company's remarkable transformation. The article, titled "How Apex Innovations Turned Disaster into Industry Leadership," described the Genesis launch event as a case study in effective crisis management and innovative problem-solving. But what struck Marcus most was how the article characterized the fundamental shift in his company's approach. Apex Innovations has demonstrated that sometimes the most revolutionary innovation is learning to prioritize what works over what impresses. The original Genesis platform had never been completely abandoned. Sarah Mitchell's team had continued working to resolve its technical challenges, and they had made significant progress in addressing the real-world data processing issues that had caused the launch disaster. But Genesis was now positioned as an advanced research project rather than an immediate commercial product, allowing the development team to perfect the technology without the pressure of unrealistic deadlines. Meanwhile, Alex's Practical AI platform had exceeded every sales projection. Companies that had been skeptical of artificial intelligence applications were discovering that Alex's straightforward, reliable system could deliver measurable improvements to their operations without requiring massive infrastructure investments or extensive employee retraining. The success had transformed not just the company's products, but its entire culture. Marcus had implemented regular, fresh perspective sessions where junior employees were encouraged to challenge assumptions and propose alternative approaches to complex problems. The intern program had been expanded and restructured to ensure that new voices were heard and valued rather than just assigned routine tasks. But perhaps the most significant transformation had been in Marcus himself. The near disaster of the Genesis launch had forced him to confront the ways that success and growth had isolated him from the practical problem-solving that had originally driven his entrepreneurship. He had become so focused on impressive technology that he had lost sight of useful technology. A knock on his office door interrupted his reading. Alex entered with a tablet in hand and the kind of excited energy that Marcus had learned to associate with breakthrough insights. "Marcus, I wanted to show you the latest implementation results from the automotive manufacturing client," Alex said, settling into one of the chairs across from the desk. "They've been using practical AI for 3 months now, and the efficiency improvements are exceeding our projections." Alex pulled up charts and graphs showing cost reductions, productivity increases, and quality improvements that the AI system had enabled. But what impressed Marcus most was Alex's focus on practical outcomes rather than technical sophistication. The system identified 17 different optimization opportunities in their supply chain, Alex explained. "But instead of trying to implement everything at once, we prioritized the changes that would deliver the biggest impact with the least disruption. They've already saved $2.3 million in operational costs, and we're just getting started." "That's exactly the approach that's making us successful," Marcus replied. "Practical value over theoretical possibility." As they discussed the implementation details, Marcus reflected on how much both of them had grown since that chaotic day at the convention center. Alex had evolved from an uncertain intern into a confident leader who could navigate complex business challenges while never losing sight of practical solutions. His team of developers and AI specialists looked to him not just for technical guidance, but for the kind of innovative thinking that could transform theoretical capabilities into real-world value. "Alex," Marcus said, "I've been thinking about our long-term strategy, and I want to get your perspective on something. We have an opportunity to expand internationally, but it would mean adapting our systems to very different business environments and regulatory frameworks. What's your assessment of the challenges?" The fact that Marcus was asking a 23-year-old for strategic advice about international expansion would have seemed absurd a year earlier. But Alex had proven repeatedly that his practical approach to complex problems could generate insights that more traditional analysis might miss. "I think the key is the same principle we've used for everything else," Alex replied thoughtfully. "Start with what works reliably in simple situations, then build complexity gradually as we understand the local requirements better. Instead of trying to create a universal system that works everywhere, we should create adaptable systems that can be customized for specific markets." Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah Mitchell, who appeared in the doorway with news that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. "Marcus, Alex, I wanted to let you know that MIT has invited Alex to deliver a keynote speech at their AI conference next month. They want him to talk about practical applications of machine learning in business environments." Alex looked genuinely surprised. "They want me to speak at MIT, but I'm just a year out of college myself." "That's exactly why they want you," Sarah replied with a grin. "You've demonstrated that some of the most important innovations come from people who approach problems differently than the established experts." As Sarah left to continue her preparations for the day, Marcus turned back to Alex with a more serious expression. "Alex, I want to talk to you about something important. The success of practical AI has attracted attention from several major tech companies who are interested in acquiring us. The offers are substantial, enough to make everyone in this company financially secure for life." Alex was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "What are you thinking about doing?" "I'm thinking about declining the offers," Marcus replied. "Not because the money isn't tempting, but because I believe we're building something more valuable than a profitable exit strategy. We're proving that technology companies can prioritize practical value over impressive complexity, and that success comes from solving real problems rather than creating artificial ones. Besides," Marcus continued with a smile, "I'm having too much fun working with people who see problems as opportunities rather than obstacles. I'd hate to lose that by becoming part of a larger organization that might not share our values." Alex nodded, understanding exactly what Marcus meant. The culture they had built at Apex Innovations was unusual in the tech industry, a place where practical solutions were valued over theoretical sophistication, where junior employees were encouraged to challenge senior leadership, and where success was measured by the real-world impact of their technology rather than just financial metrics. "I agree," Alex said finally. "We're not just building products here. We're demonstrating a different way of approaching innovation that's worth more than any acquisition offer. As Alex left to continue his work, Marcus remained in his office, thinking about the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. A year ago, he had been focused on creating the most impressive AI system possible, believing that sophistication and complexity were the keys to industry leadership. The Genesis launch disaster had forced him to reconsider those assumptions, and Alex's practical approach had shown him a better path forward. The irony wasn't lost on him that the most important lesson of his career had come from someone he had barely noticed just months earlier. An intern who had been assigned routine tasks had developed the insights and solutions that transformed not just a product launch, but an entire company's approach to innovation. Standing at his office window, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline, Marcus reflected on the fundamental truth that Alex had taught him. Sometimes the most revolutionary change comes not from doing something completely new, but from doing something familiar, much better than anyone thought possible. The millionaire had watched everything fail at the event, but the intern hadn't. Just saved his reputation. He had shown him a better way to succeed. And in the end, that transformation was worth more than any single product launch could ever be. As Marcus watched Alex through the glass walls, leading a team meeting with the same practical focus and collaborative spirit that had characterized his approach from the beginning, he realized that the greatest success wasn't building the most impressive technology. It was creating an environment where the best ideas could emerge from anyone, regardless of their title or experience. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the people who seem least important are actually the most crucial. Alex Rodriguez had proven that wisdom can come from youth, that simplicity can triumph over complexity, and that the most important innovations often come from people who are focused on solving problems rather than impressing others. The story that had begun with disaster had become a tale of transformation, recognition, and the power of seeing possibilities where others saw only obstacles. And as Apex Innovations continued to grow and succeed, both Marcus and Alex carried with them the understanding that true leadership means creating space for others to contribute their best ideas, regardless of where those ideas come from. In the end, the intern had saved more than just a reputation. He had shown an entire company how to rediscover the practical innovation that had made them successful in the first place. Sometimes the most important lesson is remembering what you knew before you thought you knew everything. What an incredible journey we've witnessed together. From that moment when everything was falling apart at the most important event of Marcus's career, to watching a young intern step forward with a solution that not only saved the day, but transformed an entire company's approach to innovation. This story proves that brilliance can come from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the people we overlook are exactly the ones who can save us. Alex's journey from overlooked intern to senior developer and industry speaker shows us that with the right combination of preparation, courage, and practical thinking, anyone can rise to meet the moment when they're needed most. But perhaps even more importantly, Marcus's transformation reminds us that true leadership means being humble enough to recognize great ideas, regardless of where they come from. If this story inspired you as much as it inspired me, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more incredible stories of triumph and unexpected heroism. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that their ideas matter, no matter what their current position might be. And remember, your moment to shine might be closer than you think. What solution are you working on that could change everything?